battalion-sized throughout the country. It is wet and rainy in Kuwait and Iraq today, but the Allies continue to persevere and to dominate the battlefield. Now let's go to the Pentagon and Pete Williams, who is the official spokesman for Dick Cheney, who is expected momentarily, and then we'll hear from General Thomas Kelly, who is the bluff Irishman from Philadelphia that we've all come to know so well, and his cool Navy counterpart, Admiral Mike McConnell, who is the head of intelligence for this battle operation.
Good afternoon. Our regular briefing here today will be from Lieutenant General Tom Kelly, the Director of Operations for the Joint Staff, and Rear Admiral Mike McConnell, who's Director of Intelligence for the Joint Staff. You've heard the President discuss the policy this morning in his remarks at the Rose Garden. We obviously don't have anything to add to the policy, but we're here to discuss what's going on the ground in the Persian Gulf and Operation Desert Storm, and happy to take your questions on that. General Kelly will have his usual opening remarks to bring you up to date. Then Admiral McConnell has a presentation for you to give you a little more information about the nature and extent of the fires, the oil field fires that are still burning in Kuwait, and then we'll be pleased to take your questions. And if you'd raise your hands, then General Kelly or Admiral McConnell will recognize you. So with that, gentlemen, if you would please.
Good afternoon. Today is the 41st day of the operation, and actually the third day of the ground phase of the operation. There are more than 537,000 U.S. troops in the theater. I'm going to break the casualties down into several groups today. Prior to the ground war, there were 23 killed, 34 wounded, 27 missing, and 9 prisoners of war. Since the ground action began, there are 4 killed in action, 21 wounded in action, 2 missing, and no POWs. In the Scud attack yesterday, there were 28 killed and 100 injured. The sum of those numbers are 55 killed, 155 wounded, 30 missing, and 9 POWs. On Scuds, there were 7 Scuds launched in the last 72 hours, 2 on Saturday, 1 on Sunday to KKMC, King Khalid Military City, and 2 towards Israel. And then 1 on Monday towards Saudi Arabia, that was Dhahran, where the casualties were suffered, and 1 towards Qatar. A total of 81 Scud missiles were launched, 41 against Saudi Arabia, 1 against Bahrain, 1 against Qatar, and 38 against Israel. Enemy prisoners of war, they're estimating 30,000 plus. The Turkey figures I don't have right now, but that's estimated to be in 1,000, so the total is 30,000 plus. Ground equipment destroyed 2,085 tanks, which represents about 50%, 962 armored vehicles, about 1/3, and 1,505 artillery pieces, or about 48%. Oil fires, there were 600 started, 500 are still burning, and Admiral McConnell will address that in just a minute. In ground operations, the Iraqi army is in full retreat, although there is still some fighting going on. 21 divisions in the Kuwaiti theater of operations have been destroyed or rendered combat ineffective. Over 400 tanks and numerous other vehicles have been destroyed since the ground war began. Targeting consists of close air support, Scuds, lines of communications, strategic strikes, and restrikes. Sorties are in excess of 103,000. In the last 24 hours, 3,000 plus, 1,400 plus in the Kuwaiti theater of operations. Over half of them were close air support sorties, and 130 against the Scuds. There were 0 Iraqi sorties in the last 24 hours. This is their 17th straight day of no air operations. 2 aircraft, however, on Sunday did fly to Iran. I believe both of them were MiG-23s. Aircraft losses, Iraq has lost a total of 103 aircraft, 42 air-to-air, and that's 36 fixed wing and 6 helicopters, and 61 air-to-ground. U.S. air combat losses are 27, 25 fixed wing and 2 helicopters. That's plus 4 from the last time we briefed on Saturday, 1 OV-10, 1 A6, and 2 AV-8Bs. Mike will now talk about some oil fires.
were a number of questions earlier about who was causing the fires. We've examined that very closely, and the evidence is convincing now. The vast majority of the fires were caused by Iraqi forces. Not only do we have physical evidence, but we have captured documents now that indicates that their instructions were to destroy the oil fields. Two instructions: inflict maximum casualties, and as a part of that also to destroy the oil fields. This is a depiction of the cord that's lit in this position. As you can see, it burns off to detonate the dynamite or the explosives that's on the oil well. This distance is anywhere from 100 meters to 50 to 100 meters, but as you can see, burned down and then blow the well. The first image I have to show you is on the 22nd of February, and this is near Kuwait City. And just to orient you, about this much of my pen, that's the International Airfield. And as you can see, the fires, in this case, the wind is blowing to the southeast. The second image is a similar area, a little bit further to the east. Note the date on the 23rd of February. This is in the morning, and this is before the ground campaign was initiated. The ground campaign was 8 o'clock Washington time on the 23rd. So you can see the systematic destruction of the oil facilities. This is Kuwait City, and in this area is where the international airport that I highlighted for you earlier. In this case, the wind has shifted, is blowing now to the northeast, and is covering the city, blanking the city in black smoke.
Okay, we're ready for a question. Yes, sir.
You said that the Iraqi army was in full retreat. Does that include the Republican Guards? Have they now come out of their fortifications, and are they trying to get north into Iraq?
In some cases they have, in some cases they haven't. When I said the Iraqi army is in full retreat, I meant over the theater. There are units that are still in position, still offering organized resistance. They are being engaged and defeated as we get to them.
Has this great tank battle that we all had envisioned of the U.S. armored forces coming down on the Republican Guard, has that begun yet?
There has not been a great tank battle. General Neal mentioned this morning that there was a tank battle going on in the southeast in the vicinity of Kuwait City at the airport, and incidentally that's quieted down now. I believe it's just after 11 o'clock at night over there. The other great tank battle has not materialized yet, and whether it will or not remains to be seen. We're hitting pieces of those organizations, and they're being dispatched as that happens.
General?
On the end here.
General Kelly, due to the fact that the Iraqi army is in full retreat, and there's so much, I noticed many of the soldiers had a lot of euphoria and almost disappointment to the fact that they did not get a chance to engage the enemy. Do you feel that there's a possibility or potential for some abuse here, and that how will the Pentagon manage this and control many of those, jubilant, young soldiers out there on the battlefield?
The ones who were saying that they felt bad because they hadn't run into the enemy are the lucky ones. I think that we're making great efforts to properly care for the Iraqis who come into our control. I will assure you that they're better off once we control them than they were before we control them. It's the mission of the chain of command to make sure that that deprivations do not concur. I'm certain that all leaders have been briefed on that, and they're watching it very closely, and we know of none to this point. Yes, sir.
General, can you tell me if there was any participation by the 1st Ranger Regiment in the capture of the airfield or the attack on Kuwait City?
No, I can't tell you that. Yes, sir.
You mentioned that the engagement at the Kuwait airfield has quieted down. Has that been resulted in a victory for the Marines and the Allied forces? Is the airfield in Allied control, and what about Kuwait City itself?
That's undetermined right now. Tomorrow is going to come. When the sun comes up, the question in my mind will be, will the enemy still be there? But it had gotten dark, and both sides broke off. And I would tell you that the U.S. forces in that area are getting pretty tired right now. They've been attacking constantly for 3 days, so they probably need a little rest.
General, what about the rest of Kuwait City? Are there still Iraqi forces in the city itself, or is the airport as close as they're still located?
We don't know if there are Iraqi forces inside Kuwait City. I'm sure I heard the same television conversations that you did. We have not entered Kuwait City yet. I think that that's going to occur shortly. When we, the coalition, do enter Kuwait City, it will be with great care, because just a handful of people inside a city can cause you a lot of problems, and there could be casualties. So we'll be prudent when we go in there. Yes,
General,
sir.
does it appear now that there will be a large tank engagement with the Republican Guard, or are you suggesting that the engagements we have had are those where they're being destroyed in their bunkers? Might we avoid a large tank engagement with them?
There have been tank engagements with the Republican Guard. In each case, the result has been a very positive one for us. Whether there'll be a major tank engagement with them, whether they'll come out with large numbers of tanks, is something that lies in the future. I don't know. I do know that when they come out of their bunkers, they subject themselves not only to friendly ground forces and friendly tank-killing helicopters, but also friendly air forces. So they'd have to think pretty hard before they do that, and I'd like to ask Admiral McConnell if he wants to add anything to that.
Just what has been detected with regard to movement. There has been some movement. We thought initially movement to engage, then it appeared they moved back to go into defensive position. So I think there's a certain element of confusion on their part right now. They're sensing the battlefield, and they're finding pressure from all sides. So I think they're making some choices now.
Is it too fast and furious with them? Is that the problem, General Kelly, and just the tempo of the battle?
It's hard to tell what it is for them, although I think they run into something that they couldn't conceive of before this battle began. Yes, sir.
General, can you characterize for us how the Iraqi people in southern Iraq, as the U.S. forces have moved through not only desert but agricultural areas now, what's been the reaction by the Iraqi people to the U.S. force?
Don't have any reports at all on that, and I don't know for a fact that they have run through civilian areas to this point.
And what's the highest ranking Iraqi defector or line crosser or prisoner that we have in custody now?
So far,
Colonel.
General,
Yes, ma'am.
have the troops, the Iraqi troops that are defending the coast against an amphibious assault, have they begun to retreat, and would that have any impact on our amphibious activity?
Of course, we're not going to discuss whether or not we'll have an amphibious activity. Yes, in point of fact, they have begun to retreat. Yes, ma'am.
General, without saying exactly where our troops are, is it possible for the Republican Guards to retreat up north? Can they escape?
All things are possible. Some of them are more difficult than others, and incidentally, we expect there will be a briefing, a tactical briefing from the theater probably tomorrow, so they will be able to answer that more.
Can you say whether we've completed the encirclement of southern Iraq?
That's what I didn't say when I answered you the first time. Yes,
Hey, General, what can you tell us? What happens if the Republican Guard decide to stay inside their defensive dug-in positions? Do you plan on going in and after them, or do you just plan on encircling them, waiting for them to come out?
Well, we will deal with the Republican Guards whether they're in their defensive positions or not. If they elect to stay in their defensive positions and get close up on American combat forces, they're in deep, deep trouble, because now you have the precision air attacks, now you have the attack helicopters, now you have the precision tank fires and ground missile fires like the TOW and others. So that would be pretty tough for them if they want to stay there.
Have you taken any Republican Guard prisoners yet?
I don't know specifically of any Republican Guard prisoners. It's possible, but I just don't know for a fact. Yes.
Just following on that, in light of how little resistance has been encountered in this ground war, including the much established Republican Guard and the threat that they were going to present to our troops, the question is, where is the fight in this army, and what's happened to it, or did it ever have it to begin with?
They're all good questions. Probably better addressed at Saddam Hussein than me. I know our guys are doing good, and I also know that what they didn't know before the fact is that they're running into the finest military force on earth, one that's worked very hard over a long period of time, and one that's fully capable of closing with the enemy and capturing them or destroying them using the shock action firepower.
But why do you think they are not fighting back aggressively?
Well, they've been bombed for 41 days now. They've had a debilitating war with Iran for over 8 years, where they lost a couple of 100,000, I think, killed. It's possible they're battle weary. I don't know. I can't tell you what's in the heart of the Kuwaitis. I can tell you that many, many, many of the prisoners who've already been taken have been quite grateful that their phase of this campaign is over.
Are you surprised by the lack of resistance you're encountering?
Pleasantly.
General, for Admiral McConnell,
just one more thing.
If I could offer a follow-up to the line of questioning. We worked very hard to measure bomb damage assessment and share with you the methodology and so on. And I think perhaps what we're saying is that the delivery of the precision weapons against dug-in forces probably had more impact than we could measure in real time. So as we move closer, as the General says, 41 days of bombing with this kind of precision, it's had a tremendous impact. Now, I'd offer one other comment. The battlefield is confused right now on the part of the Iraqis. They're having difficulty sensing from which direction they might be attacked.
Yes, sir.
For Admiral McConnell, for the past several days we've heard reports of continuing Iraqi atrocities in Kuwait City. Can you describe some of them? And I know you won't describe your sources, but can you say whether there's anything to corroborate these reports other than the Kuwaiti resistance?
The vast majority of the information has been from Kuwaiti resistance. There's been some corroborating information, and you've seen the same descriptions that I have. It's been announced on television and so on, but rounding up of relatively young men, rape, decapitation of women, summarily executing youngsters in front of their parents. Those are the reports. Hopefully they're not as bad as we've heard, but as we move closer, we're probably going to find out.
Is there any independent corroboration of the killings, at least?
Not yet.
No.
General? Yes, sir. Second row.
Yeah, could you draw any distinction between the fighting inside Kuwait and the fighting in Iraq? Has there been any difference in the character of resistance and the success of the U.S. forces on the ground table?
No, to the best of my knowledge, as a matter of fact, the fighting against the Republican Guards hasn't been any stiffer than the fighting against anybody else over there. So it looks like a piece of whole cloth. Although a lot of divisions inside Kuwait proper have been declared combat ineffective, I think most of them are infantry, dismounted infantry divisions.
Just to follow up to that, to what extent are you administering the territory which you're taking, assuming that some of it is populated, even if only by a few Iraqis? Who is governing them? Who's in charge in this territory?
We're not administering any territory inside Iraq. We're taking measures to protect our force inside Iraq and Kuwait, and we're not into military government. Yes, ma'am.
General, could you...
Go ahead.
You mentioned that you've got some captured documents. Can you tell us at all what you think the forces are being told, if anything? You mentioned a confused situation on the battlefield. Are there orders to resist going out? Are they being told to retreat to Basra? What are they being
The document that I mentioned is dated. It was instructions to the Corps commanders dated the 17th of January. Remember, that's the day that the bombing campaign started. And it was general instructions about how to fight the battle. My reference to confusion is what we can sense on the battlefield right now. We've apparently been very effective in damaging their ability to communicate and to coordinate. So they are confused with regard to what the threat is on the left or the right or the front or the back.
Could they even set up an organized withdrawal if they wanted to?
They're trying to right now, and we're helping them in being unsuccessful in that. Yes, sir.
On what happened with the Scuds yesterday, after 40 or so successful Scud launches, was there complacency by the troops? Did something happen? Was there a mistake made, or can you tell us what happened?
I think there was clearly not complacency. There is an investigation ongoing in Saudi Arabia right now. I don't know what the facts are, so it would be wrong of me to conjecture. I am certain that the results of that investigation will be made known as soon as it's completed, just as we have with the other unfortunate incidents that have occurred.
There are reports in Ohio and Pennsylvania newspapers saying that only 3 families of the 28 dead have been notified at this point as of this morning. Is there a problem reaching these families, or is there something that you can tell us about that?
Not to my knowledge. The initial major effort, of course, was put into trying to save those who were still alive and trying to take care of those who were dead. I'm sure the notifications will proceed quite reasonably, and I hope what you're saying is good news for some of the families there.
Is that unusually slow?
No, I wouldn't think so.
General Admiral, can you tell us what's the situation with Hussein and his high command? Where are they? And there's a report today that Hussein has a jet ready to go. Will you get him?
A, to the best of our knowledge, he's still in the vicinity of Baghdad. B, we would not conjecture on what we would do if he tried to get out of the country.
Are jets that fly, are Iraqi jets that fly in the area still being targeted?
Of course. Yes, by all means, absolutely. Yes, sir. Get over here.
General Kelly, what are your major concerns right now? What could still go wrong?
there could be a concerted attack on the part of the Republican Guard and other forces that are still in the theater. Remember, they represent a viable military force, so we have to be very vigilant to make sure that doesn't happen. We are being very vigilant to make sure that doesn't happen. We have to be careful that units that appear to be retreating, and this has happened before, don't turn around and start shooting at us. We will be careful of that. So I think the major concern is keep our guard up and make sure we don't let down, and we're not going to let down.
What about chemical weapons?
We have not seen chemical weapons used to date. There have been no indications, don't think, in the theater that they're present. However, during the Iran-Iraq War, a technique that they used was to pull their forces back when they were getting ready to use chemical weapons. So again, we'll remain vigilant there. Go ahead.
Just to offer a follow-up, what could happen. Recall the Republican Guard is reportedly the best. There are 8 divisions, and they're all located just outside Kuwait along the northern border. That's 3 armored, 4 infantry, and 1 special forces division. So it is not, that element has not been defeated, so they could certainly mount some kind of an attack.
Follow up on that. General?
Let me just clarify one thing. I mentioned an A-6 was shot down in my initial briefing. I'm told that's not correct, so I'll get you an update on that and give it to you as soon as I get it.
General?
You want to follow up? Yeah, go ahead.
Is it true, Admiral, that the Republican Guard is deployed on his own exercise grounds over there?
I'm sorry, on what?
I've heard stories according to which the Republican Guard is deployed on the area where they've been exercising for years, and the place has been very well prepared for a battle.
They have exercised in the place in which they're currently located. That's correct.
General?
For a long period of time, but we feel fully confident that we can deal with that. Yes, sir.
Has there been any evidence of any Iraqi units that have followed President Bush's prescription and have attempted to withdraw without their weapons?
There are many examples of Iraqi units that have laid down their weapons and surrendered.
I understand that, but are any trying to just walk back north?
Not to my knowledge. Do you know any? No. Yes, sir, over here.
Can you assess the damage to the Kuwaiti oil production facilities? I mean, how long will it take to put out these oil well fires? What percentage of wells have been set afire? What will it do to their production ability?
Well, this is about half of the oil wells in Kuwait, and a lot of the infrastructure has been damaged, the gathering centers, the oil tanks, and so on. So we're talking probably months to years to totally recover, and we're talking weeks to months to put out the fires.
Yes, ma'am.
General, have the goals of the war changed since you've had such battlefield success? And did you always intend to take a portion of Iraqi territory and hold it as a negotiating tool?
We have not taken a portion of Iraqi territory to hold. We are maneuvering on Iraqi territory because our mission was to drive the Iraqi army out of Kuwait. Our mission has not changed. If you want to talk about goals, go ask National Security Council or the State Department, but our mission has not changed. That's to drive the Iraqi army out of Kuwait, and that's what we're doing. Yes,
General, we know you're not in the business of releasing body counts, but can you give us any estimate as to the number of Iraqi casualties at this point?
No, and the reason I can't do that is because I simply don't know. And that kind of information, again, is tactical and would come out of the theater.
General?
Yes, ma'am.
General, what steps are being taken to get the prisoners of war out of Iraq or try and get access to them? Is there any progress in that?
Getting them out of Iraq. They're being retrograded to the rear because there are so many of them. That's going slow. Just getting enough.
Sorry, the Allied.
Oh, the Allied prisoners of war. To this point, the Iraqis who have made statements about what it is they would like to do have not indicated to us in any way that I know of what prisoners of war they have, and have not talked about any exchanges of prisoners of war.
General?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. You mentioned earlier about Kuwait, and it's now nightfall then. There now, what happens when dawn arises? What are you looking for in terms of, are you worried about booby traps? You mentioned a few soldiers. What else might you be worried about when you move into Kuwait City?
Well, through the night and into the day tomorrow, we will continue to press the battle. We are still engaged in combat, and we will not let up. I mentioned earlier that the Marines may have slowed down for the night because they're tired and they've been attacking for 3 days, but they'll be back up and at them very early, I can assure you, and the other forces that are there, many of them will be attacking through the night.
Are you worried about booby traps? And
You're always worried about booby traps, but that doesn't stop you from pursuing your objective. Yes, ma'am.
You have over 30,000 prisoners, you've said, and we were told that you're having trouble dealing with that many prisoners. What happens if you get 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 more, which based on the...
We'll continue to deal with them, and we'll continue to have difficulty, but the difficulty is a transportation difficulty. The prisoners are still going to be properly cared for. They're still going to be fed, and I will still assure you that they're better off now than they were then. Yes, sir.
Follow up.
Yeah.
If Saddam Hussein were to remain in power, would those prisoners be repatriated?
That's policy issue to be addressed in the future. I'm certain sooner or later there would be, but I'm not the guy that does that. Yes, sir.
Sir, of the 8 Iraqi Republican Guard divisions that are left that you still call a viable fighting force, can you quantify at all how many are still in their fortifications, how many are left there to put up a fight?
Mike, can you address that?
The 4 infantry divisions are still intact because they're a little further to the north. The 2 armored divisions and the mechanized division have been attacked, and the level of destruction is we're trying to sort that out at the present time. Probably the mechanized division has suffered the most attrition, and the 2 Republican Guard armored divisions the least attrition. And I would put a general figure on it to say they've suffered damage, and the mech division has suffered significant damage.
General Kelly?
Yes, sir.
General, how many people are we talking about in terms of the Republican Guard? You gave us the number of divisions, et cetera, but ballpark figure, how many people are there? 100,000?
What? That's what they started with. I don't know what it is at the moment.
General?
130. Yes, sir.
Question. There's a telephone call that CNN received from someone in Kuwait saying that Iraqi troops who were leaving were taking thousands of Kuwaiti citizens with them as human shields or hostages back to Iraq. Can you confirm that? Do you know anything about that?
No, we can't. I heard the telephone call, watched it on TV, and if, like everyone else, found it very interesting, but we can't confirm it because we haven't gone in yet.
General Thomas Kelly and Mike McConnell, the Admiral, the Admiral and the General, who have been briefing there on a daily basis at the Pentagon. The General saying we will continue to press the battle. The Marines are getting some rest tonight, but they'll be back at it again tomorrow. They're very confident about how well the battle is going so far. As to whether the Republican Guards can escape to the north, he said, I suppose anything is possible. NBC's Fred Francis at the Pentagon right now. The war continues apace, Fred.
Yes, he said that anything is possible, but I can tell you from Pentagon sources, Tom, that the encirclement of the Republican Guards is almost complete. It's unlikely that any of those divisions, which are 12 to 14,000 men with their tanks, could move north through more than 120,000 American troops who have now moved into southern Iraq. The encirclement is almost complete, and we've learned also that there's tremendous confusion in the Iraqi ranks. Bad communications. They've cut it off. One division doesn't know what the other's doing. They do not know where the Allied forces are. And we are told by a Pentagon official that they should all be wrapped up with a bow on Friday. Tom?
Fred, what about this business of prisoners of war? They had 30,000 and counting. At last count, they're coming in so fast they can't keep track of them at the field. The facilities that they have before the war began, I remember a report that you indicated that they were prepared to deal with, what, 100,000 altogether?
I said on January 7th they were prepared to deal with 200,000, but they didn't quite expect 200,000 this quickly. They expected that over the first week or so. And what they're doing is they're going to march them back on foot, quite simply. There's no other way to deal with it. They're bringing up buses, Saudi buses, which are used for the Islamic pilgrimage, the Hajj, and they're going to put them on buses and take them to camps that have been pre-prepared in Saudi Arabia. They have camp space for 100,000 in Saudi Arabia, and they expect to fill those camps up quite rapidly by the rest of the week. Tom, they said 30,000 captured. I was told here at the Pentagon that it's probably over 50. They're coming in so fast they cannot count them.
Thank you very much, Fred Francis of the Pentagon. So the war does continue. There is no escape route for the Republican Guard of Saddam Hussein. As for Saddam Hussein himself, General Kelly made it clear that if he tries to escape by air, that plane will be shot down. We'll have continuing coverage throughout the day on this NBC station of America at War, and tonight on NBC Nightly News, another special edition of America at War, including the liberation of Kuwait City, the capital of Kuwait. American forces have not yet entered, but journalists are already there. I'm Tom Brokaw in Saudi Arabia. For those of you who think that this is only a dry and desert-like country, it's raining right now. I'll see you later tonight on NBC Nightly News.
This has been an NBC News special report. We now join the program already in progress.